Welcome to Top Branch, a series from the Dove Agency, where we're rooted in stability and reaching for growth. Join the Dove Agency and our special guests as we bring you expert insights and practical solutions to help your interior design business thrive. This is Top Branch. Let's grow together.
We're back.
Hi, I'm Ruth Janson, and this is Beth Bender, and we are back for episode 2 of Top Branch. We are talking about a topic today that is near and dear to my accounting heart. It is something that when I first started getting into this industry, I realized what a huge risk it is for designers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, you can have a lot of risks that can come. I mean, we had, pandemic, or you're going to have tariffs, or you're going to have some of these bigger things that can hit your business that can cause problems. But I think the risk of price changes, it's not big as that, but it's all the tiny things that end up to be a really big thing. So, I think that everybody can share a war story about when, they had a price change that went really bad. And then they had to, either reselect because their client was like, I'm not paying that. And then, they're having to then reselect other things. So there's this trickle down effect also with price changes that I think occur. And especially when it comes, and I'll talk just for a quick second about procurement and then kick it back to you. But great. I think if you're sitting here and you're ordering something and you don't take into account the fact that if you wait 2-3 weeks before you procure that item, you might end up with a price change that could cause a trickle-down effect of other selections because maybe your client won't accept that price change. So you need to have a process in place for procurement where you're procuring things in a time frame that works with that vendor, where you are guaranteed that any price changes that occur on their end, they're not going to be kicking those back to you. So sometimes that's 24 hours, sometimes it's 48 hours, whatever it is, but you've got to get that process in place, because that's probably where we've heard the majority of the war stories around price changes.
And I think, the thing about a price change is that some of them are tiny, some of them are big, like in Beth's example, but they can add up over time, whatever shape or size they are. And if they're not being reviewed in a timely manner, that's when it can really be painful. So just kind of 3 quick kind of takeaways around this topic in general, which is, you should always have good language in your contract that says, any price changes those are the client. They're going to ultimately pay for those, whether, unfortunately with the tariffs or whether it's a vendor's change or what have you, they might want to reselect or they might want to do something cheaper, but ultimately that should not be your burden to bear as a designer. And then secondly, whatever system that you have chosen to help run your back office of your design firm, you should have something in place that's allowing you to track and monitor these price changes.
And most of these sophisticated systems have that.
Correct.
I think the problem is that a lot of designers don't actually go identify what that report or what that tool is within the system they're using to see that.
Right. And so having that system in place and having a process for your team to be reviewing these in a timely manner. And then the third piece of that is going to your client in a timely manner, right? So no clients like to hear about a price change, but they really don't like to hear about it far down the road and where there's really no optionality for them. So just making sure that you've got a tight contract, making sure that you have a system in place where these price changes can be monitored and where you're actually taking the time to do that. Mm-hmm. We suggest that our clients are doing that weekly is ideal. Monthly, worst case. And then the third piece would just be good communication with your client. Like anytime these price changes are coming up, going back to them, asking. A lot of times our clients even set up like thresholds with their clients saying, if something is more than $500 in what we quoted, or maybe it's $100. We're going to go back to the drawing board on this selection.
And we do that in our procurement process too with our clients. So, when we're as the Dove Agency procuring for our clients, we ask them what is that threshold that we can move forward with the order if there is a price change. And so I think, you're exactly right. Having that in the contract is going to help you not have to feel like you're constantly having to go back to your client, or for your client to feel like they're getting nickeled and dimed.
Right.
Because they just know
painful.
that there's whatever that threshold is for that client is established up front.
Right. And I think if you're, doing a good job of keeping track of your project as it, kind of moves through the continuum of the months that you're typically working on a job, making sure that you're checking in on kind of the overall profitability of your project. Like if you have a, 25 or 30% markup, like kind of seeing how you're faring against that, because that gives you the information to say, oh, we have this price change. I think I'm just going to absorb this because I'm doing so well with this project. Or, ooh, this project is already much lower than I had expected it to be. And so maybe I want to push this back to my client ASAP.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And, finally, I think the last thing that, to wrap up this and then you'll give your little quote. But one other thing that I'll kind of throw in is that if you are not making sure that those things that you are purchasing, that, it's like you run out to do an install or you go to an antique fair or something like that, and you grab a couple things and you bill them to the client, but you don't actually, necessarily bill everything that you picked up or everything that you grabbed, that's
a price change.
That's a price change. So think about those things too, that, you see them hit your credit card and you're like, what is this? Well, you need to make sure that you're reviewing that, like we said, on a weekly or a monthly basis at worst, because that's where you're going to find those things that you just grabbed on the way.
Exactly. And that actually is such a good little segue to the quote, because we're doing another James Clear quote for those of you that listened last time, but we aren't doing him again.
No,
he's going to be on a break.
We love his work.
Yes. But this one is really good because, like Beth said, it's like these little, like the install, you're picking up something last minute and maybe it's $100 or $150, but if you don't track it and bill it, you're in a bad spot. So this quote we're going to end on today, which is, the edge is in the inputs. The person who consumes from better sources gets better thoughts. The person who asks better questions gets better answers. And the person who builds better habits gets better results. It's not the outcome, it's the inputs. So consider your price differences, these little inputs along the way, that if you monitor them correctly, you're going to end up with that profit that you're expecting on your job.
Absolutely. So great. We'll see you next week.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
The Dove Agency is committed to services that ensure your financial stability and growth. As part of our dedication to the design industry, we present ID Nest, a powerful software solution for designers. Built by industry experts, it integrates financial insights, project and task management, time tracking, CRM and marketing tools to streamline workflow and power your designs. Join us next time on Top Branch, and in the meantime, to learn more, visit idnest.com.